I know I'm late to the party, but you'll have to forgive me for not thinking the game about Pinocchio, made by a South Korean no-name studio, would be one of the best games I've ever played. As it turns out, its combat is tuned so tightly, I'd even put it in a class above some entries in FromSoft's library. It's that damn good. So now that we're all on the same page about the P and Liza P standing for peak, what does that mean for its glitches? Well, as it happens, the combat isn't the only thing that's been tuned tighter than Sophia's. Well, it's tight. What used to be an incredibly broken speedrun full of horizontal zips and vertical boosts on patch 1.02 and below has been reduced to glitchless speedruns on 1.05 and above. NeoWiz seems to have gone out of their way to patch every noteworthy exploit speedrunners took advantage of, to the point that playing on current patch essentially means that you're stuck with a glitchless playthrough. Or does it? Despite the general consensus online seeming to be that every exploit has been patched by now, I've found that couldn't be further from the truth. Welcome to Crot. It's time to break Liza P. This video is sponsored by Holzkern, the watch and jewelry brand that makes natural materials into high-class fashion. Holzkern manufactures all sorts of premium accessories, but is most known for their watches. When I told them they'd be sponsoring a video on Liza P, they sent over this model they call Nirvana, which looks like something straight out of Crot. I don't know how well the camera does it justice, but this thing is beautiful in person, and what impressed me most was learning that it powers itself automatically through a free-swinging weight inside, meaning that just by wearing the watch, it will wind itself, with no need to ever charge or replace a battery. I'm telling you, Geppetto is involved in this somehow, he has to be. Of course, this is just one of a countless number of designs listed on their site, which you could spend an entire day just browsing. Trust me, I have. And of course, if having a clock on your wrist isn't your thing, they also offer a huge variety of bracelets, rings, necklaces, earrings, and all sorts of jewelry that, despite having an inexpensive price tag, look anything but. Holzkern makes the sorts of things that make great gifts, so keep them in mind the next time you need to buy something for a special someone, even if that special someone is yourself, assuming that you're, more of the Prince of High Society type. I genuinely can't express how much better these look in person than they do through a screen. And besides, I gotta respect a company that knows a good game when they see it, right? Check out Holzkern by clicking my link in the pinned comment or video description, and use my coupon code Phobia at checkout to get 15% off anything site-wide. And thanks again to Holzkern for helping to make this glitch video possible. Before we start a new game, we need to talk about patches. The glitches I'll be showing in this video were all performed on patch version 1.05, and while I can't verify which glitches may or may not get fixed in the future, as long as you're playing on 1.05 or earlier, you will be able to reproduce everything you see in this video for yourself. Those that have been around for a while know this is how I handle all the games I cover on the channel, so it should be no surprise, but for this game it's made a little more complicated than necessary. Liza P calls the same patch different things based on which platform or service you use to purchase the game. Your title screen may show 1.5.0, 1.05, or even 1.005.001. Do you guys have enough digits? Are you sure? Regardless of what it might show in your specific title screen, all you care about is the first non-zero number following the first decimal point. All of these numbers refer to patch 5, meaning that all three versions of the game will behave the same exact way and contain these same exact glitches. We are 4 minutes into the video, and I'm teaching people how to count. This is not good. Upon starting a new game, we wake up and find ourselves in a train car in Crot Central Station. Normally, you'd begin the game with nothing, but due to the updated patch we're playing on, we actually start the game with a few items in our inventory already. The first is just a set of cosmetic items to make Pinocchio look the way we like, but the other is the Azure Dragon Crescent Glaive, a weapon that will be used for several exploits later on, so just keep in mind that we already have it. For now, we simply walk to the end of the train car and select our starting class. This choice is up to your personal preferred playstyle, of course. And listen, if you prefer to use strength builds, that does not mean that you are necessarily homosexual.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
I won't spend very long in opening the game since it's fairly linear and there isn't anything to exploit yet. We take out the puppet guarding the key to the main plaza, then fight our way through Sarasani Alley to reach the first boss fight of the game. The merchant at this Stargazer sells the 3 starting weapons, so you can purchase the 2 that you did not select at the beginning in order to have all 3. He also sells electric abrasives, which I suggest buying here. Straight ahead is the Parade Master, our first boss, and not a particularly challenging one. If you're struggling with him, this is a great opportunity to practice deflecting. Not only will this skill pay huge dividends in the late game, but deflecting enough attacks during the second half of the fight will break the Parade Master's weapon, severely reducing the damage you take from getting hit. I highly suggest trying this at least once if you never have before. Playing Lies of P by deflecting is a completely different game than playing Lies of P by dodging, trust me. After defeating the boss, we proceed straight ahead to Hotel Krat, where we must lie and say that we are human in order to be granted entrance inside. You'd think that for a game called Lies of P, lying would play a huge part in this run, but we're going to be skipping so many story events with glitches, we're going to have very few opportunities to lie in the first place. It's going to be a weird playthrough, you'll see. The hotel is the hub area of Lies of P, and here we meet Phobia, our government-assigned level-up lady, as well as Eugenie, our blacksmith. Next we proceed ahead through the gate in the back of the hotel to reach Elysion Boulevard, where the first glitches of the game take place. As soon as we enter this area, we see a member of the Black Rabbit Brotherhood destroying a cable car suspended overhead, providing foreshadowing for a later boss. And Gemini says the weirdest line in the entire game.
Hey, let's be more careful.
What the hell are you talking about? Who are you talking to?
This area starts off much like the last, with standard puppet enemies standing in our way, until we reach the rooftops of the city. A bit further ahead, we run past this giant puppet guarding a chest, and unlock the second Stargazer in Elysion Boulevard. It is here that we will be performing the first glitch. Immediately outside and to the right from the Stargazer, you'll find this plank that Pinocchio can use as a bridge to reach the neighboring rooftops and continue forward deeper into the stage. Falling down from here is survivable, and will place you in a different part of the boulevard, but both paths ultimately connect to one another and lead to the same place. However, the street just beyond the railing below is a different part of the stage entirely. In fact, it's the very end. If we could drop down beyond the railing and onto the street, we could skip the entire last half of the boulevard and fight its boss right now. This is too far of a gap to jump, but out of sheer luck, there just so happens to be an invisible wall here that we can jump to and walk on top of to make it across this otherwise impossible gap. First, position your character slightly to the right of the center of the plank, and as far back as possible without falling off. Then open the menu and back out of it, but keep that button held. Now when you walk forward, you will immediately be in a sprint. Finally, sprint forward and click in the left stick to jump, just before Pinocchio walks off the edge of the plank, to jump onto the invisible wall found here, dropping down onto the street below, and skipping us straight to the boss of this area. This trick may look precise, but it's actually deceptively easy. As long as you begin sprinting immediately by abusing the menu trick, and have P standing relatively close to the right place on the plank, the only hard part is timing the jump. The hitbox of the plank is actually a bit larger than the visual graphic of the plank itself, so you can wait longer to jump than you might realize at first. There are a ton of invisible walls like this throughout Lies of P. We'll learn more about them later on in this video, but I also think there are many more in the game that are still undiscovered, waiting to be exploited. Once here, take out the two puppets with swords to unlock the shortcut elevator, and have instant access to the Stargazer above, and avoid ever having to perform the jump again on this playthrough. This is a skip I use on every playthrough of this game now, it's just too convenient not to. Straight ahead is the boss fight with the Mad Donkey, and I think now might be a good time to go into a deep dive about enemy classes. All the enemies in Lies of P are classified as one of three species: puppets, humans, or carcasses, which we won't see until later. All three of these enemy types have a specific elemental weakness, and all three attack one another on sight. It's that last fact that we can abuse here. The Mad Donkey is the first human-type enemy in the game, and since he is found in an area surrounded by puppets, if you simply lure him backwards out of his arena, it's possible to aggro the donkey and the puppets onto one another, and then sit back and watch as the boss fight completes itself. Admittedly, both the police puppet found around the corner who will deal the most damage, and the donkey himself leash rather aggressively, so you'll need to work to keep their attention focused on you long enough to lead them to one another. The Mad Donkey used to have a much more generous wandering range on a previous patch, so this exploit is a lot harder to do now than it used to be, but it's still possible. The Mad Donkey is a required boss, and we aren't exactly skipping him with this trick, but we didn't fight him ourselves, so let's just put that word skip in quotes for this one, how's that? When the donkey dies, it will teleport us back to the coach where Geppetto's been waiting, and he will give us an additional pulse cell and unlock the path to the next area straight ahead. This area is relatively short and leads to the Scrapped Watchman, and a notorious difficulty spike for Lies of P. We could go fight him now like we're supposed to, or not. If we take a look at our available stargazers, you'll see that we are currently in Chapter 2. This next glitch will allow us to skip Chapter 2, and 3, and 4, and 5, and despite NeoWiz attempting to fix it multiple times in the past, it still works today. First, we return to the previous stargazer, the house on Elysion Boulevard, then we proceed forward across the wooden plank and deeper into the stage as intended, until reaching this point on the roof just before the red butterfly spawns. From this corner of the roof, it's possible to go out of bounds of the stage, and all we need to do it is the weapon we were given for free at the very beginning of the game. There's yet another invisible wall just in front of us, and we can skip over it by abusing the Dragonglave's block ability. First, aim your camera straight ahead, hold block, and then activate the Dragonglave's weapon art to somersault forward with a ton of speed, covering even more distance than a jump, dropping over the invisible wall just ahead that holds us in bounds of the stage. Although it may not be immediately obvious, we are now out of bounds, and since we are no longer trapped within the bounds of the stage, that also means we are no longer trapped within Chapter 2. The next path we need to take is quite long, and a bit unintuitive since it involves walking through walls that have no collision, so I'm going to let this part play out unedited so that you can follow along in your own copy of the game. The reason this glitch is so impactful is the fact that, like most Souls-likes, the map is made up of individual areas that are all physically connected to one another. In this game, Hotel Krat serves as the central hub area, and those of you that are well versed with Lies of P will already know that several chapters loop back around and through the hotel, often being associated with major storyline progression events when they do. We can't skip to the end game by simply going out of bounds, but we can absolutely skip to the next major story progression event. In this case, it happens to be defeating the Black Rabbit Brotherhood at the end of the Malum district. Elysion Boulevard and the Malum district are both directly connected to the hotel, so despite being found 3 entire chapters apart, they're actually located quite close to one another in the physical layout of the game world. Eventually you'll find a section where the ground breaks and extends forward in a shape that looks almost like a bridge or a dock. We need to go to the end of this and sprint diagonally right off the corner. Next we continue forward and drop down again onto this platform, which places us on top of a wall within the Malum district itself. Finally, we walk forward and to the right through this environmental geometry with no collision, and continue on ahead to drop down onto the ground below, which you might recognize as the boss arena for the Black Rabbit Brotherhood. If you've seen any of my glitch videos for Souls games, you probably know that almost all the bosses in these games can be frozen if you first load them in normally, and then find an alternate way to get into the boss room without using the intended entrance. This will avoid triggering the boss's AI, and you'll be able to complete the fight with the boss totally frozen. This is similar to how it works in this game as well, but with it being a non-FromSoft game, it works slightly differently in Lies of P. In this game, it isn't necessary to load the bosses in properly first, they're already there at the beginning, but NeoWiz simply programmed them to be invisible until their cutscene is triggered. This means that you can drop into Black Rabbit Brotherhood's boss room from out of bounds, and identify the location of the eldest brother by simply walking around randomly and looking for something blocking your movement. At which point, you can simply start swinging to deal damage to the boss without them ever fighting back at all, since they aren't properly loaded. I'd suggest applying an abrasive here so that when you inflict a status effect, the visual graphic of the status will get applied to the enemy's model and allow us to see where they are. Not only do you freeze the boss with this glitch, but defeating them triggers the end of Chapter 5, meaning that the game updates its story events accordingly. Now we can take the elevator up and out of the Malum district, meet Giangio and be given the cube early, and unlock the gold coin tree without ever completing Chapters 2, 3, or 4. And remember, this can all be done right now on current patch. As game-breaking as that last glitch was, you might expect there to be some sort of side effects, and we see those straight away after getting back to the hotel. The next thing the game expects us to do is talk to Geppetto in his office in order to trigger Antonia to give us the key to Rosa Isabel Street and begin Chapter 6. The problem is, the door to Geppetto's office doesn't open until you defeat the Scrapped Watchman at the end of Chapter 2. So even though Geppetto is now inside the room waiting for us, we can't actually get to him until going back to beat the Scrapped Watchman. Thankfully, however, we can take some free levels to the ergo we got from beating the Black Rabbits, and we now have the cube, which can be used as an additional source of healing during the fight. There's no glitch for this. The Scrapped Watchman is a pure skill check. I mentioned earlier that different enemy types have different elemental weaknesses, and puppets like the Watchman are supposed to be weak to electricity. Unfortunately for us, the Watchman also uses electricity himself, and is therefore completely immune to the status. so while using an electric abrasive or throwing cells will technically allow you to deal a little bonus damage during the fight, they both have much less effect on this boss than they will on the things we'll be fighting later on. We do have the cube, however, and while it is extremely slow for us to use at this point, we do have plenty of time to trigger it on the transition between phases 1 and 2, and it can allow you to save a heal or two for the latter half of the fight where they are likely more needed. Eventually we take out the Watchman, officially ending Chapter 2, and triggering the door to Geppetto's office to open. Now we can return to the hotel to talk to Geppetto, where he skips straight to the Chapter 6 dialogue that we need to enter the next area, and also tells us about a very serious, very not funny at all topic.
P organs.
I'm not saying anything. We talk to Antonia to get the key to Rosa Isabel Street, and skip straight to Chapter 6. There are no glitches to show off until we make it to the Opera House, so we run through this area as normal, defeat the optional Mad Clown Puppet for a free quartz, or skipping, whichever you prefer, and unlock the Stargazer just outside. After opening the main door, we take the center stairs up and to the right to find yet another set of stairs and reach the 3rd floor. We take out the Spider Opera Singer, and then continue on ahead to this room, with the balcony that overlooks the room with the swinging chandelier. The room down below is the end of the Opera House, and leads to the boss of this chapter. There used to be an exploit to skip directly to the boss from here, by jumping over the balcony's railing, but Neowiz patched this by placing an invisible barrier above the railing, so skipping to the boss with this method is no longer possible. But that doesn't mean we can't do it another way. If we return to the previous room where we fought the spider puppet, we can look down below, past the 2nd floor, and see the 1st floor at the very bottom, behind the center stairs in the main room. It's supposed to be impossible to jump down to this floor from here, but by once again abusing the Dragon Glaive, we can. First, we equip the glaive, aim the camera toward this gap, block with the glaive, and then use the weapon art. The spinning slash covers more distance than a standard jump, carrying us just far enough to drop through this gap. It may not be immediately obvious how this is advantageous at first, but if we take the stairs up behind us, we'll reach none other than the swinging chandelier room, as well as a shortcut that leads back to the original Stargazer, skipping the Opera House entirely, just like the original skip that was patched out long ago. With nothing else in our way, we can now cross the plank and challenge Romeo, the boss of Chapter 6. Much like the Scrapped Watchman, this boss is a significant difficulty spike from what we fought thus far. I would love to teach you a glitch here, but I don't know one. Romeo is a 2-phase fight, and it's a hard one, but it is by no means impossible. As a puppet, both phases are weak to electricity, so abrasives and throwing cells both work really well here. The most dangerous attack Romeo can do is this move where he buffs his weapon with fire and performs this extremely long attack combo. Unless, of course, you know to simply dodge left, in which case every attack will miss. With that, Romeo goes down, and we move on to Chapter 7. This chapter is a long one, and there's nothing exploitative we can do to shorten it, so let's blast through this section. First, we make our way to Lorenzini Arcade, fight through our first encounter with Carcass-type enemies, and open the door to the exit to reach the Grand Exhibition. Next, we activate the Stargazer here, and fight our way through the puppet enemies to reach the boss of this chapter, Champion Victor. Victor is yet another enemy classified as a human, which makes him weak to acid. Acid weapons are very limited at this point in the game, but you should have at least one acid abrasive by this point, collected as an item found on the ground. And once inflicted with the acid status, he will take damage over time. This is probably one of my favorite bosses in the game, where learning the deflect timings feels especially satisfying. Victor hits the floor, and we meet Simon Manus, who is, well, he's kind of like Elon Musk.
I am become meme.
In the next room, we meet Red Fox and Black Cat, who must be having psychotic episodes because they talk about how nice it is to see us again, despite our Pinocchio never meeting these characters before in his life. Speaking of things not making any sense, when we touch the gate to the cable car, Vanini, a character we've never met, calls us on the radio, that we don't have because he never gave it to us, to ask that we go to Barren Swamp to collect the golden ergo he needs, dropped by the boss there. As if this game being a love letter to the funny Japanese man wasn't obvious enough, this chapter is the obligatory Poison Swamp stage. We fight through the puppets ahead, complete with a second Mad Clown puppet, to pull the lever that releases a minecart which crashes through a wooden wall, serving as a shortcut back to the original Stargazer. That's great and all, but something doesn't look right, and if you're familiar with Lies of P, you may already see the problem. Alidoro is supposed to be found here, but we never rescued him from the cathedral in Chapter 4, so he's just not. I wasn't quite sure how NPC questlines would behave given what we did earlier, and I was kinda hoping Alidoro would just appear here anyway, but no such luck. It's too late at this point, so we're forced to move on without him. This is one of the side effects I was referring to earlier. Whenever a glitch breaks a game wide open like this, there tends to be consequences, and we'll see more of that later. The rest of Chapter 8 goes on as expected, and we eventually make our way to the Stargazer at the end. Interestingly, Hugo the Explorer is still found in his normal location, and still says all his dialogue related to Alidoro, but he doesn't offer to sell boss weapons or move to the hotel like he does after Alidoro dies. That means Alidoro is still alive somewhere, just not here. When it comes to sudden difficulty spikes, the next boss might be the worst. The Green Monster of the Swamp is a 2-phase fight, and uniquely, the only boss in the game that changes enemy types in the middle of the fight. For Phase 1, he's classified as a carcass, making him weak to fire, and in Phase 2, he becomes a puppet, swapping out the fire weakness for a weakness to electricity. Being aware of these defensive changes can be a big push to help swing the fight in your favor, but that doesn't make it an easy one. Well guys, I didn't want to do it, but all our skipping earlier may have caught up to us. We are so underleveled at this point, I may have no choice but to tap into the summoning mechanic for some help with this boss. Psych? Are you kidding me? I beat this boss in the second try! This game is for babies! Where is Shrek? Get Shrek in here! Is that Shrek? You tell him, Shrek. Hell yeah, Shrek, you tell him! Normally, Alidoro appears here immediately after the boss room for another event, but is once again missing. There's only one more opportunity to find Alidoro, and it's just before the final chapter of the game, so we'll see what happens when we get there. For now, we continue forward to Chapter 9, which has us return to the very beginning of the game to find that Krat Central Station is now overrun with carcasses. We fight our way deeper inside until encountering the Robber Weasel. Just like with the Mad Donkey at the very beginning of the game, Robber Weasel is classified as a human and is found in an area surrounded by other types of enemies. So if we simply run past her and lure her upstairs, we can aggro all of the nearby carcasses onto her and just stand back and watch as they... Oh, they're dead already. Huh. Well, it's like I always say, if you want something done right, you gotta do it yourself. That's in the Bible, I think, probably. Continuing out forward brings us to the street of what used to be Sarasani Alley, and a bit further ahead we reach a part of the city now known as Collapsing Krat. Gee, I wonder what gave it that name. Aside from the bottomless pits found everywhere, this area is pretty straightforward, and we soon unlock our next Stargazer and the next boss, the Walker of Illusions. This arena is interesting because rather than having a black wall that you have to touch to enter the boss room, the Walker's arena is just found immediately at the top of a ladder. And if you were wondering if we can exploit that, the answer is yes. If we equip Carcass Body Fluid, which is the throwable item that deals acid damage, we can stand far away from Walker Texas Ranger and throw body fluid at her until inflicting the acid status effect. At this point, we drop back down the ladder and wait for the boss health bar to disappear before climbing back up. This doesn't reset the fight or cure the status effect, and for whatever reason, once the boss has been afflicted with acid, she will no longer aggro onto us when we throw items. That means the boss is now effectively frozen, and will stand there like an idiot while we empty our pockets into her skull. I killed the boss this way purely with elemental items, and didn't even get to the assortment of physical damage crap I've been carrying around in my pockets. If you need to be told how OP throwing items are in this game, now you have been. I also tested this out with different status items, and can confirm that the freeze only happens with acid, so definitely a glitch. Enjoy this one while you can. I imagine it would be pretty easy to fix. Immediately after defeating the Walker, we enter an elevator which breaks and crashes down to the floor as Pinocchio rides it. This triggers a major story event where the hotel gets attacked and we lose the ability to teleport there, instead having to fight our way there on foot and defeat another boss, the corrupted Parade Master, to do so. Or at least, we're supposed to. If instead you quit out of the game back to the title screen immediately after the elevator crashes to the ground and load back in, you should appear at the top of the elevator, with the game still thinking the story progression event has been triggered. Now, if we return to the previous Stargazer on foot, we still can't teleport directly to the hotel, but we can teleport to Rosa Isabel Street, which is directly connected to the hotel. This allows us to skip everything between the elevator collapsing and entering the hotel again, including the corrupted Parade Master. Once you enter the hotel this way, everything will play out as intended, so there's no real reason not to employ this skip. Both the Walker of Illusions freeze and the corrupted Parade Master skip were discovered by the new Blade Runner on Twitch and YouTube. I haven't seen anyone else talk about these two glitches specifically, and I definitely would not have found these without Blade's help. So go check them out if this kind of content interests you, and let's get those subscribers up. After entering the hotel, Sophia tells us that they were attacked and that all of the hotel NPCs are upstairs hiding in Geppetto's office. We go upstairs to free them, and we find Eugenie, and Antonia, and... I'm sorry, have we met? So in all seriousness, this is Vanini, the character that called us on the radio earlier, the character we never rescued during Chapter 3, and the character my YouTube audience keeps telling me that I look like. You know, I don't see it. Vanini gives us the lead-acid battery that we need to progress to the final chapter here, and I was wondering if he would go back to being missing after this story event, so I went downstairs to check, and nope, he's here permanently. Meaning that triggering the attack on the hotel in Chapter 9 forced Vanini to rescue himself from Chapter 3. Man, this playthrough's weird. Vanini is supposed to give us a reusable weapon buff when we rescue him, and if we talk to him here at this point, not only does he not hand it over, we get no options whatsoever. Huh. Okay, you know what? I want to check something. We're heading back to Chapter 3. Getting there is no problem whatsoever. Since we never started that chapter properly, the game has just been kind of waiting for us to do it since we beat the Scrapped Watchman ages ago. We teleport to Krat City Hall and proceed ahead to enter Vanini Works. Thankfully, there's a skip we can do here that saves us a ton of time over running through this area normally. From the Workshop Union main entrance, we go down the first ramp and then encounter these barrels in the corner of the street. It's actually possible to get on top of them thanks to this... You know, I don't know what this is. Let's call it a bag of crap.
If you need an easy way to remember it, just think of a bag of crap.
By sprinting down the ramp, we can jump from the very edge of the crap bag and cover just enough distance to land on top of the metal barrels. Next, we need to walk along the railing to the left, except not exactly. This railing isn't actually a place we can stand, but we can roll onto it and immediately off of it if we're fast enough. You'll need to be in light equip load to cover the distance for this part, so make sure to unequip enough defensive parts to make that happen. Next, roll along the railing to get far enough to avoid an invisible wall that exists on our right, and then roll over the gap and land on the right side railing. From here, we need to drop down onto the ground below, but we have to do so carefully. Not only is this fall lethal if we drop directly from this height, but there are invisible walls that you can get trapped behind if you drop in the wrong place. Thankfully, it's a lot more straightforward than you might think. All we have to do is walk off the edge, toward this tree under the spotlight, which will allow us to land on top of an invisible wall halfway down, slowing our fall, before we drop further down onto the ground below, placing us in the depths of the factory while skipping the first half entirely. We activate the Stargazer through the pipe in front of us, and sprint through what's left of Vanini Works to reach... Yeah, okay, that's what I thought. Vanini is still here, waiting to be rescued. So, what does that make the one in the hotel? A fake? Who is this guy, Yosefka? Pfft, you can't trick me. I've played Bloodborne. I know what's going to happen next. You're going to get pregnant with an alien. So just to clarify, return to Chapter 3 like this is completely optional. I just did it for my own curiosity. If you don't care about the grinder modification tool, or saving Vanini, you can continue on ahead to Chapter 10 without issue. But since we've come this far, let's take out Fuoco and complete the chapter properly. Compared to the things we've been fighting up to now, Fuoco is a pushover, and once he goes down, the two Vaninis combine back into one at the hotel. We unlock the ability to use reusable weapon buffs with the grinder, and his dialogue options now function the way they should. But one mystery still remains. What happened to Alidoro? To find out, we open the secret passage in the hotel and enter it to begin Chapter 10. This is the shortest chapter in the game because a lot of the content that was already finished for this stage was cut during development. There are quite a few videos on YouTube that explore this topic if you're interested, but the short of it is that an elevator that was initially designed to be a shortcut was repurposed to be the chapter's entrance due to time constraints. That means that we start this chapter much closer to the boss than the previous ones. That boss is the second fight with the Black Rabbit Brotherhood, or in our case, the first fight. We can't skip this fight this time around, at least not on current patch, but to be honest, I think people make this fight out to be a lot more difficult than it really is. Status effects are your friend, and don't forget, they stack. Fire, electricity, and acid can be inflicted simultaneously on all four members of the Brotherhood, but if you'd rather focus on just one status, you'll get the most value out of acid, since the rabbits are classified as human enemies. The eldest brother won't spawn until only one rabbit remains, so if you bring the HP of two members down and finish them both off quickly, you'll have time to inflict a status effect and buff your weapon before the second phase even begins. We take out the rabbits for good, and who do we find in the next room but Alidoro? As it turns out, when you defeat Romeo without ever rescuing Alidoro from the cathedral, he skips all the way to his final location at the very end of the game. You lose out on your ability to complete Eugenie's quest, you miss out on Alidoro's cryptic vessel, you never get the opportunity to kill him, and you have to go without boss weapons until the final chapter of the game. So while the Malum district skip is one of the most powerful glitches you can do in Lies of P today, be careful using it if you're going for all achievements. In either case, we can finally trade rare ergo for boss items. This means that we can finally pick up the best item in the game, the Extreme Modification Amulet. This thing grants an additional 5% damage for every fully charged Fable slot on the HUD. And since we now have 5, that means that we will deal an additional 25% damage on every hit just by wearing this one item. As if that weren't enough of a damage upgrade, we can also trade the Wintry Rapier that we've been using since the very start of the game out for something with even better technique scaling. And you know how I feel about big knives. With that, we board the submarine to enter Chapter 11, the final and longest chapter of the game. After crashing on the beach of the Isle of Alchemists, we make our way onto the shore and soon encounter the Door Guardian, the first boss of this chapter. This is a gimmick fight, and all you have to do to win is attack the boss's weak leg until he falls over, and perform a fatal attack for boosted damage. After a cycle or two of that, the battle is won. Nothing too complicated thus far. This grants us entrance to Ark Abbey, and dear God, this area is 4 times longer than it needed to be. It's essentially a giant tower that we're climbing to the top of, and as usual when it comes to glitches and Souls-likes, it's a lot easier to glitch your way down to a lower area than it is to glitch your way up to a higher one. While a modern skip is desperately needed to be discovered for this chapter, it's unlikely to happen, so for now, we are climbing. When we finally reach the top, we encounter what is widely considered to be the most difficult boss in Lies of P. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Lyxacia is hard. And she's not the only one if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, boy.
First of all, she's a human, so acid is once again the name of the game. Phase 1 can be taken down fairly easily with a bit of practice, but Phase 2 is where the true difficulty starts. As soon as she jumps into the air to shoot lightning, you can begin throwing carcass body fluid and inflict acid before needing to deflect a single projectile. This isn't a FromSoft game. Pinocchio has an arm on him. Applying a second acid buff to your weapon will maximize your damage further, as will learning the deflect timings for the lightning projectiles she shoots mid-fight. Also, did you know that the charge attack of the katana is also a deflect? Lyxacia goes down accordingly since, as we've already established, this game is easy. Next we reach the final floors of the tower to catch back up with, "Oh hey Elon, I forgot you existed. What you been working on this whole time? Electric cars? Spaceflight?" Aw man. For all of Simon's self-aggrandizement, he might be one of the most forgettable characters in the game, and this boss fight is no exception. He's also a human, so all the acid strategies we employed for Lyxacia work again here, he's just less hard. And he's not the only one if you know what I'm saying. When we defeat him, he gives us some lore about his life or something, I don't know, probably about how much he likes the letter X and hates his ex-wives, and then we take the elevator down to meet Geppetto for the game's finale. But what's this? Who could have predicted that the dude that has been giving us creepy old man vibes since the very beginning of the game was actually the bad guy all along? Also, how'd you get down here? That brings us to the final boss of Lies of P, the Nameless Puppet. I wasn't sure about this boss the first time I fought it, but it eventually became one of my favorites. Wait, did he just heal on me? Alright, I take it back. Once again, this is a 2-phase fight, and since we're back on a puppet enemy, that would normally mean being back on electricity. But the Nameless Puppet has so much HP that I actually prefer the damage over time of the acid status for this fight. Of course, like we established with the Black Rabbit Brotherhood, nobody says we can't stack both at the same time. With a combination of electricity, acid, and some absolutely killer deflections, we defeat the Nameless Puppet, putting an end to Geppetto's puppet frenzy, and with it, Lies of P. I genuinely believe this is one of the best games made in the last decade, so if you made the same mistake I did and overlooked it originally, consider this your sign to pick it up for yourself. Because after all, the story doesn't end here. The prequel DLC is on its way, and a proper Souls-like franchise from NeoWiz is just beginning. Sounds like we'll have a lot more to break in the future. See you soon.